Welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm here today with Akina Shu. Welcome, Akina.
Yay! Thank you for having me as a guest for the Digital Nomad World podcast. Am I right?
That's right. That's right. We have a
Good.
series. We put it on YouTube. We put it on our Digital Nomad World site. And
Mhm,
for all the listeners out there, I'm really excited because we're going to talk about being a digital nomad in Japan.
mhm,
So, Akira, thank you for introducing us to this world. It's quite rare, especially
mhm,
because, as many of you may know, at the time of this recording, it's still really difficult for tourists to get into Japan.
mm. Yeah, true. Right now, Japan hasn't really opened the border yet. People have to go through the agency in Japan to make sure that they can enter Japan. But hopefully, the border is opening soon so that we are thrilled to have lots of international digital nomads around the world to Japan.
Yes, and we want to get you guys ready for that. So, first of all,
Yep.
Akira, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Tell us your background and how you became a digital nomad.
Okay. So I'm Akina, and I didn't know that it will be on a YouTube, so I'm not putting any makeup.
No worries, Akira. You look great.
And I'm from Japan, and I used to work for a company in Japan for 8 years. But after that, I decided to graduate from my company and then started my own journey, which I became digital nomad in 2019. First, I joined this peace boat where I could travel around the world for free if I got accepted as an interpreter. Then, from 2020, I started traveling around Japan first because pandemic hits. I couldn't really go abroad. But last year, 2022, in 1 year as a digital nomad, I've traveled 7 countries, 20 cities, and now I'm back to Japan. But how I became digital nomad is kind of funny story that I kind of followed the guy who I met first time. He just invited me to go to Bali and I followed him. And then that's where I met digital nomads. And then they're spending this ideal lifestyle that I've been always wanting to. So that's the very first time for me to be a digital nomad.
Oh, I love that. I mean, sometimes you need that guide, that extra push from the outside to get you started.
Yeah,
And maybe people
yeah.
listening, they're going to have a similar story. So that is
Mm,
super cool. And the thing is, like, I know that there are not many digital nomads in Japan. It's quite rare. So the
mm.
fact that you became one is even, I think, more remarkable, especially at a time of the pandemic. So,
True.
so what is the digital nomad scene like in Japan?
Mm, I guess like you mentioned that we barely see any Japanese digital nomads around the world, especially who can speak English. I actually know lots of Japanese digital nomads traveling around Japan or sometimes abroad, but probably they're not really in the international digital nomads community. They have their own communities. They probably find Japanese communities to make sure that they can ask any questions when they're in the new countries. That's why it's kind of rare to see a Japanese nomad abroad. But I guess the number of Japanese nomad is increasing, especially after the COVID, because I see even the remote workers for companies can be digital nomads, and I see some of them actually traveling around Japan. So it is increasing, but not sure how many exactly.
Okay, yeah, that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you is like, are things
Mm,
changing in Japan? Because having
mm,
lived there myself, I
mm,
know that, in the past, it was such a face-to-face culture. Like you
mm,
really needed to attend meetings with your bosses. And
mm.
even like, I don't know if you want to explain to people this, what they call the hanko system. What is a
The stamp.
hanko? Like what, how
Yeah,
does that system work in Japan?
it's still
It's still here.
it's 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 kind of beautiful culture, I would say, yet it's kind of making things harder for us to work fully remote. For example, I came back to Japan after 10 months being nomads abroad, and one of the reason is because I needed to, you know, put my hanko on a paper to submit to the government to get subsidiary. So I could have asked the, other person to do it for me, but I had other reasons to come back to Japan. But one of them was definitely because of this stamp culture that we have in Japan. Everything is paper and pen and then hanko stamp, which is has to be like a physical things, not on the digital. So that's one of the reasons kind of, hard for us to work fully remotely.
Yeah, and I imagine you get this special stamp early on when
Mm,
you start needing to
yeah.
have like it's your signature basically, but it is a physical ink stamp. And I found that so
Mm,
fascinating when I was there. And as you said, I'm sure they need to update this system to really get people in Japan to be able to
mm,
work more remotely for
yeah.
longer periods of time.
Mm,
Now that you're back in Japan, after being away for quite a while, have you
mm,
noticed that there's more co-working spaces or there's more work from an office, but like
mm,
individually? Do you see these
mm,
spaces growing?
mm. Actually, I see the other way. A lot of Japanese companies
Oh,
started asking employees to come back to the office because it's kind of settling down. But still, I would say have already realized that they could actually work fully remotely. So some of them kind of started looking for jobs allowing them to work fully remotely. So that in order to hire, you know, I would say better employees, then companies realize that they have to actually allow them to, work fully for like remotely so that they can hire anyone from anywhere. So it's kind of, back and forth. Some companies started asking them to come back, but others also found out that, they can hire anyone from anywhere. And in order to hire a better one, then they kind of need to adjust and then change the system from, office style to remote work style.
do you think Japan will do this? Do you think they're going to have to change?
I know like already some of the companies completely allowed employees to work fully remotely, not only in Japan, but also abroad. But there are some like, certain restrictions and yeah, but I'm hoping that more Japanese companies would apply that system in the future.
Me too. I saw so many workers in Japan when I lived there. They kind of seemed like
Mm.
slaves because they worked for so many hours in the office. And of all
Mm,
the countries in the world, honestly, that I could think of,
mm,
I really hope Japan can embrace this
mm,
idea more because they were so
mm,
extreme before. So
mm.
and you're
True.
at the forefront of this, Akina. I hope that you're inspiring more and more nomads or people in Japan to become nomads. Now,
Mm,
I want to talk about if we are from a different country and we come into
mm,
Japan and we want to be a
mm,
digital nomad there. Is it
mm.
easy for us to work as a digital nomad in Japan? What are some things that we should be aware of when we enter, like maybe the phone plans or the SIM card system when you get
Mm,
there?
mm. Good questions.
So, from some of the first things I think of when I go into a new country.
Yeah, that's true. To be honest, because I'm a citizen from Japan, so I never actually thought about how to get a SIM card because I've never, being able to experience as a foreigner to be in Japan. So I'm not really familiar with the SIM card system. Yet I
Mhm.
know there are so many used for co-working or co-living services in Japan. And people usually think that the cost of living in Japan is pretty high. And I used to think the same way. But after traveling around the world, I actually recognized that I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but the cost of living in Japan is not as expensive as people think, or I used to think. So, for example, the rent in Tokyo, probably the average would be $800 for the 1K, like one room. But if you choose to live in countryside, the price of the rent will be half of it. And also there's some cool living service that I've been using in Japan. Is called Live in Anywhere Commons. It's only $250 per month to use that service, and then people can use more than like 30 or 40 facilities around Japan to live for a month. So if you think about that rent, it's actually pretty cheap. And I know there is also other service only for foreigners or international people is JR Pass, and it's not applied for citizens. So I'm always jealous of you guys that who can use this service, which is like um I think like you know more than me about this JR Pass, but
Yeah, it's like a unlimited train travel on the bullet
mm,
trains. It's not every
yeah,
bullet train, but you can do the
mm,
high-speed rail network for a fixed
yeah,
price for 7 days.
yeah,
They have 14-day passes.
yeah,
And yes, it's a very good deal considering
yeah,
one return trip from Tokyo to
mm,
Kyoto is about the
mm,
same price as like the 7-day pass, which is
yeah.
the last time I checked.
Mm.
So
Yeah, so I think like Japan does have so many, advantages to live in as a digital nomad, but I guess, it's not probably well known yet. There are two reasons. One is probably far away from anywhere geographically. It's just like, located in Far East Asia. But I know there are so many nomads in Thailand and Bali, so I'm hoping Japan will be, stop by from there to go back to United States. For example, nomads from United States, it's on the way, and there's also like cheap flight from Tokyo to LA, which was about like $400 one way. It's pretty cheap, so it is possible, and yeah.
yeah, I think that as you mentioned, Bali and Thailand are very popular nomad hotspots.
Mm,
But the thing is, they have more restrictive visa rules, or at least they did before COVID.
mm, mm,
You can go to Japan normally for 90
mm,
days without needing
mm,
to leave. And that's, I think
mm.
that Thailand is 30 days, Bali was 30,
Yeah.
then you could extend to 60. So Japan could
Mm,
be really attractive that way. But also, I think people are always, when I was in Thailand and Bali, they were saying, oh,
mm,
but right now when I'm in Thailand, it's nice and warm. It's the winter, but
mm,
in Japan, it's cold. And that is true. Like
mm,
Japan has the four seasons,
mm,
Okinawa being a bit warmer, being
mm,
not, it's not tropical in the winter. It's not like always
yeah.
warm. But I think that's
Mm,
one thing that hopefully people will get over and just plan with the right
mm,
clothes to come to
mm,
Japan. I also want to mention really quickly about the SIM cards. The only thing I
mm.
can say is that usually your SIM card in Japan does not include a phone number. So you can't
Okay.
call from that number,
Oh
but you
no.
can, yeah, you can get SIM cards from the airport. I recommend getting it in a big city.
Mm,
Don't go straight
mm,
to the countryside before you get a phone plan or a SIM card. They usually last about 30 days before you have to like get another one. But
mm,
yeah, they're a good deal. Like usually like $40 a month. They're still a little bit more expensive than
wow.
a lot of places you would in different countries. But they
Mm,
also have, as you know, those pocket Wi-Fi's, like the little Wi-Fi
mm,
devices you can carry around and pay
yeah.
monthly for that. I really like those because they work quite well around the country, I found.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, it can be more convenient because they have Wi-Fi
mm,
at some train stations.
yeah.
And sometimes like a convenience store, like 7-Eleven has a free
Mm,
Wi-Fi, but other than that,
mm.
you're going to have a lot of like dead spots if you don't have your SIM card or your
True.
or your pocket Wi-Fi. So yeah.
Yeah, I heard the eSIM system around the world is getting better depending on the country or the area for sure, but I'm hoping that Japanese eSIM system will be also better in a near future so that we don't always have to switch around every country's SIM card, right? That was pretty annoying for me.
Definitely for me. I had trouble holding on to those little tiny cards. I'm sure people listening
Yeah,
have can identify it and they've done this in the past at some point. It's
yeah.
and you don't know, like you said, all the rules for different countries change, but
Mm,
Yeah, so far the SIM card is working best for me in Japan when I visit.
Yeah, yeah,
So you mentioned this really cool service called Living Anywhere Commons. I think
mm-hmm.
another thing that could be a problem is that website is only in Japanese at the moment,
Yeah,
right? I would say translate with Google Chrome browser can be helpful for people if
yeah.
you want to contact and use that service. What did you have to provide to Living Anywhere Commons when you signed up? Like a copy of your ID or I
No,
wonder what you'd
just
have
the
to
credit
provide.
card's information to make sure that you can pay or you've paid for the monthly fee, and then you can just use it. It's pretty easy.
Okay, great. I don't know how
Hmm.
much they've had to deal with people that don't speak Japanese yet, but if it's that simple, I'm
Mm,
sure we can figure it out online and then
mm,
have a really great cultural experience when we start going to those different places. Um,
true.
yeah. Are there
Yeah,
any
that's true.
other co-living
Mm.
services that you would recommend to people?
Hmm. I would say um, there are two more in Japan. One
Okay.
is called Half, Home Away from Home, and then another is called Address. And both of them are very good for co-living. But if you want to use just like um, several days or 5 days or 10 days, then Half will be easier to use. And Half is the abbreviation for the Home Away from Home, and it has more than 150 facilities in Japan, not only in Japan, but also abroad. So that if you choose, let's say, 5 days plan, then you can choose one of the facilities out of 150s in Japan. And if you choose monthly plan, you can also choose, co-living space or yeah, it's everywhere in Japan. So it's pretty easy to use. And another service called Address is same, but you need to change the place every 2 weeks. You can't stay at one place longer than 2 weeks. So depending on your lifestyle, if you want to stay in one place longer than 2 weeks, maybe Half or live in anywhere commons would be suitable. But if you prefer to switch and then try many different places, Address could be the option. So depending on your lifestyle, there's actually so many services are coming up. And I know there's also another service, it's called Sanu in Japanese. And it's a little bit fancy subscription service. You pay $500 per month for 5 days, but you get to live in this like whole wooden like made house so that you totally feel like very refreshed and you can still get to work.
Wow, that's super cool. Okay, so how do you
Yeah.
spell Sanu
Well, is
if
it
we were
right?
to look it up?
I'm trying
Well,
to make sure.
yeah, I'm like not even sure. I'm like CENU. She's gonna check,
Sanu,
yeah. That wooden house sounds amazing.
Sanu. Or maybe I might have remembered differently.
Oh, that happens. And I was wondering about address as well, if it's like address.jp or
Yeah. Sanu is SANU. Sanu second home.
okay, Sanu second home. Thank
Mm.
you very much.
And address is ADDRESS address.
Address. Okay. Is the
Oh,
website like address.jp or
address.
I'm sure if we Googled the keywords, we could find that. But yeah, because address is such a common word, it's like,
Sure. It's actually a cute domain. I just realized it's address.love.
that's adorable. Okay. I can remember
Yeah.
that too. It's very memorable.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah, I can imagine that Japan is going to get very creative with the different co-living spaces. And you mentioned
Yeah.
co-working. Do a lot of these co-living places that you have stayed in Japan, do they include a
Mm,
co-living or a co-working space within the facility?
mm. So, for the living area commons and half, they make sure that the places they have contracts have these co-working spaces or at least stable Wi-Fi so that people can work. So, you don't have to worry about it. The address, because I haven't used that service yet, so I'm not really sure. Um, yeah. So if you can use live in anywhere commons or have those services, they make sure that the place has stable Wi-Fi so that you don't have to worry.
That's fantastic. And it's a bonus
Mm,
because a lot of places I've found around the world, they charge extra for co-working, or your co-living
mm,
is like so tiny, you're like, I don't want to work
that's
here.
true.
I have to go
Yeah.
and pay somewhere
Yeah, I
else. So,
remember, yeah, when I was in Argentina, there's so many Selena and I liked their design, but as you mentioned that they charge you extra for using co-working spaces. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna work from the cafe area in Selena. So I didn't really expect that because, these Japanese service actually give you both co-living and co-working spaces and it's all included. So for me, it was kind of like a culture shock.
oh, I can imagine. And, working
Yeah.
from the cafe, my biggest problem is always like, do they have the plug that I need? Can I
Mm,
find a seat near the plug? But a co-working is
yeah.
always thinking about that. So I
Yeah.
understand that. Okay,
Yeah.
now I want to ask you what a lot of people may be thinking. So
Mm.
where are your favorite places to work in Japan and to like where would you recommend people work from as they travel or check out different parts of Japan?
Mm. There are so many places that I would like to recommend. Does it have to be just one or several?
Oh, several is better.
Several is better.
Several is
Okay,
better.
so okay. I know a lot of people already know about Tokyo, so I'll just skip Tokyo and I will just mention about mm, three places in total. One is Nagasaki. And the second is Kansai area, Osaka Kyoto area, and the third is Wakayama. So starting from Nagasaki area, it's located in Kyushu, southern part of Japan, and then it's a port city, so that people are pretty open-minded, and then they have this first co-living co-working spaces of half home away from home, so that they have huge communities where they can welcome you and you would have no problem to make new friends there. And their foods are amazing because it's facing to the ocean, so you get to eat lots of sushi or fresh fish, and that's the reason that people come to Japan and enjoy. And the second place is Osaka Kyoto area. I guess a lot of people would know Kyoto is. Um, so the reason why I chose Kyoto and Osaka is because there are actually so many good co-working spaces and have communities, so that if you use those co-working spaces, you would have no problems to make friends or even opening a company in Japan. They would love to help you. And usually Western part of Japan, like people are funnier than East part of Japan, and they have this like always, sense of humor, trying to make you laugh with the punchline, so that I think people are more friendly, so that it's definitely, recommended to go there. And Kyoto is kind of like a typical Japanese style of um street or kimono or temples. You get to feel the history of Japan and the real Japan. So yeah, it's a good place to go. And the third is Wakayama. It's actually known for workation place in Japan. Workation in Japan is kind of popular. It's the combination of word of work and vacation. And there are so many IT companies moved from big cities to Wakayama Prefecture, but it's just like 1 hour flight from Tokyo to Wakayama, and it has both nice beach and World Heritage Place. It's called Kumanokodo. It's like I always forget this word. in Spain, there's Camino de Santiago.
Yeah, Santiago de
Yeah,
Compostela.
yeah. So
Route,
we
yeah.
have that Kumanokodo in Wakayama, so that you can enjoy both beach and um, mountain at the same time. So I would recommend all these three-ish places.
That is amazing. And I have to say that like there's such a variety of landscapes in Japan.
Mm,
And whatever you're looking for, even there's like a sand dune area in Japan, which I don't know if they have
mm,
a co-working or a co-living, but I was so
mm,
shocked when I saw that Japan with all
mm,
the islands and the 4 different seasons, you really can experience
mm.
just about anything you're looking for.
Yeah, Japan has more than 6,000 islands actually. So
Right? It's like unlimited, and there's so many islands with different themes. Like I know that they have
yeah.
the art island called
Mm.
Naoshima, for
I just
example.
went to Naoshima 3 days ago.
Oh my goodness, I've been there once, and how is it
Yeah,
doing post-pandemic?
it's 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 still good. I mean, this year in 2022, we have Setoji Geijutsu, which is an art festival, only happens in every 3 years. So that all these islands is full of art, and it's just so nice. It's just like you live in this art because the island itself is full of artwork, so that wherever you go, you can see the artworks. And then in one day, I visited maybe 5 museums. And even on the street, you get to see lots of small artwork, and it's just pretty. And yeah, so if you go to Osaka and Kyoto, from Osaka, you can actually take a Shinkansen to go to Okayama. That's where I am right now, actually. And from there, you can take a boat to go to these small islands, Naoshima, Teshima, and there's so many small islands, but it's full of art. So it's really nice to visit as well.
That's lovely. And I mean, the
Mm.
skiing in the winter, if you want to do ski holidays combined with your co-working, it's so
Mm,
possible. It's so
mm,
amazing. And
yeah.
I recommend the store Uniqlo to everyone, which is now
Uniqlo.
around the world. But whenever I go to Japan in
Yeah.
the winter, I go straight to
Mm,
a Uniqlo, which is
mm,
Uniqlo, and you can
mm,
find really amazing like insulated clothing to keep you warm.
mm.
It's called Heat Tech. And
Yeah.
I always make sure to stock up on new heat tech when I visit Japan
Mm,
because I think
yeah.
it works really well for the climate
And
there.
another must item from Uniqlo is ultra, uh, ultra heat, no, ultra light down,
Ah,
ultra
ultra
light
light
down.
down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's very like light and portable, yet it keeps you warm when it's in winter. But the thing is, like, you can pack it in a very light, and so that it doesn't take a lot of space, and it's pretty portable. And if you have that just one of it, it just helps you a lot.
Yeah, I cannot recommend Uniqlo enough for like the different types of fabrics they make to help you in
Mm,
your everyday life, whether keeping warm in the winter or staying cool in the summer. They have thought about
mm,
all of these things because in Japan, one thing you will find is that there's not a lot of insulation in the homes. So
true.
you will feel it colder inside during the winter
Mm,
or even sometimes hotter in the summer. So it's,
that's true.
Japan, Uniqlo has thought about this and they've like helped everybody get
Mm,
access to affordable clothing. But I
mm,
really use my Uniqlo like all throughout the year, no matter
mm,
where I am. I really
mm.
think it's, but the problem is I always have trouble finding the heat tech in the summer. If I go in the summer, they don't have it
True.
in the store. So it's like you got to make that winter trip if you want
That's
this. So
true. Have you ever tried the online Uniqlo?
I have had a look on the US site when I was visiting
Mm,
the US, but they were not,
mm,
it was out of stock. It's, I think, very
mm.
popular. But that, yes,
That's
they do
actually,
have. nice online shopping as well. And it's in multiple cities around the world now. Not in
Mm.
Lisbon where I live, but yeah.
Oh no.
So, but yes, for anybody out there, Uniqlo is a great resource. I think for nomads as well, like you said, ultralight down is very
No,
helpful.
actually, there is. I just checked it with the app.
Oh, is
There
that
are,
the US store?
it's a Japanese app, Japanese
Okay.
Uniqlo app. But if you look for ultra light down jacket in
Yes.
summertime, they still sell it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I will clarify that I did see when I was in the shop in Japan back in July. They were selling
Mm,
ultra light down. What they were not selling, which I also love, is ultra warm heat tech
mm.
like
Heat
pants.
tech is also
I
good.
think it's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
warm. I think it's too warm for them to sell at that time. So, but it's great for skiing. If you want a skiing
Yeah.
holiday in Hokkaido or Nagano,
Yeah.
yeah.
Niseko.
Niseko, this
Mm,
wonderful town in Hokkaido, which I think is half
mm.
Australian now.
Yeah.
So many
True.
Australians went there to buy places
Mm,
for skiing. It's amazing.
mm,
So, well, Akina, thank you so much for sharing all of your experience about being a digital nomad in Japan. I hope this has
mm-hmm.
inspired people to go there as soon as they can and the restrictions
Yeah.
ease.
Yeah. I hope so too. I'm pretty sure lots of Japanese would love to have you all and can't wait to even hold a Nomad festival in Japan. I guess we've never had that before, right? So it will be really awesome to have Nomad festival to invite all of you, and that could be an opportunity for you guys to come to Japan, and then starting from there, you guys can stay in Japan longer.
Oh, yeah, that would be so amazing. I really hope
Hmm.
it happens. Maybe
Yeah.
2023.
Or
Well,
2024.
or 2024, given the slow opening of the borders.
Yeah,
Well,
make sure the
Akina,
border is open. Yeah.
if people want to follow you, where can they
Mm.
go?
Okay, so on all my social medias, ID is B Akina Self. So BeAkinaSelf, B Akina Self. On Twitter, but it's all in Japanese. On Instagram, yeah, I use English to post my post in Instagram. So yeah, you
And we
can
also
reach me out
we
there.
also should mention you've got the logo behind you, but you have your own podcast in English called Nomad
Yeah.
University.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I also have my own podcast. It's called Nomad University, where you can find it pretty much everywhere, Spotify or Apple. I mean podcast or Google Podcasts, and it's all in English. And I've been interviewing international digital nomads around Japan, around the world in English about how to find a love or how did they become digital nomad and what are the challenges and what to brings if it's only 3 items. So from hilarious to, I don't know, from serious to hilarious. So,
That's awesome. And I'll plug myself as well. So I also have a separate podcast called The
mm,
School of Travels, which
mm,
Aki and I laughed about because it sounds kind of like Nomad University.
similar. Yeah.
But I've actually interviewed Akina twice now on the School of Travels. So episode
Mm,
73 and 77. If you want to check us
mm,
out there, you can hear a lot more about Akina's background in 73 and then
mm,
77, which was just released. We talk about this. We talk about being a digital nomad in Japan in a slightly
yeah.
longer format.
Mm.
So yeah, check us out there. Check out Nomad University. And thank you, Akina, again for joining us.
Thank you, Becky, for having me.